I taught this class once before on Monday, and I had so much fun with hanging out with John and talking about these two books. It surprised me. I realized, it's just like I put thousands and thousands of hours and years into these books, and and when they're finished, it's like, okay, but to go back and talk, and I don't talk to that many. I didn't talk to so many people about the books when I was writing them. It's a very solitary process, and yeah, so it just was exhilarating for me personally, and so I'm looking forward to class again. John, do you want to? Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We are hoping that we are not going to talk solidly for 40 minutes and then try and squeeze some questions in at the end in a rather unsatisfactory way. What we would prefer is if people ask questions or make contributions as we go along, as things come up, or whatever prompts you. So it's a fairly loose structure, free-flowing, like the Tao that inspired Bruce's first book. So do interrupt, put your hand up, and come in whenever you want. We're hoping to read a couple of passages, but really because we don't know whether you've read either books or both books, and we'll take a little poll of that in a second. We're going to spend some time just with the pictures, with the photographs that are in each book, because we thought that was an accessible way for people who haven't read the books to kind of come in. And also, I think Bruce feels that it's a good way to prompt him into speaking about the stories behind the pictures and his life. So that's probably how we will do it. The pictures as a point of departure, but then who knows where we'll go. I will try and keep things flowing if, as sometimes happens on Zoom, the environment doesn't help people come in and speak. So don't worry about if you don't have questions, but if you do, just jump in. Could we just take a hands up to see who has actually read? Let's start with the book that Bruce is probably more famous for, which is Teaching by Hand, Learning by Heart. Put your hand up if you've actually read the book, so as we can see what we're. Okay, so that's a good few people.
Part of it. So it's a different question if you read part of it instead of.
Oh, that counts. I say the same thing over and over again.
Absolutely. Put your hand up if you've read The Way In and The Way Out.
Probably not so many. Yeah.
Okay. So that gives you a sense, Bruce, of where we are. I'm going to get things started, and I'm going to start where we started the first time, just so as people can hear your answer. The books on one level seem very different to each other. One of them is a record of your conversation with Lao Tzu, a sage from China 2,000 or more years ago. And the other is a kind of record of your teaching life through the many decades. Do you see them as coming from a similar source? Do you see them as related in any way, or are they quite different for you?
Yeah, they're very similar for me. And what I've basically done is bring physicality and bring the body into Lao Tzu's vision of the world and kind of anchoring his metaphors and ideas in the body. And then I've taken the Alexander work, which has sadly, over the last 50 years or so, fallen into, not always, but as a profession in general, has fallen into reducing itself more to the body. And so I wrote a book about Alexander work that shows how the work is really connected to the bigger picture of living a life. And so they meet in that way, because Alexander, I think of Alexander philosophically, psychologically and philosophically as a Taoist. And I'm not the only one. Aldous Huxley said that. He thought Alexander was the first Western Taoist. And he talked about him as the father of the nonverbal humanities. Interesting. He loved Alexander. I mean, Alexander helped him with a million things. So, so I feel there, and I feel my teacher, particularly my main Alexander teacher, Marge Barstow, I talk about her as a Midwestern Taoist. She was very, very Taoist in her point of view. She probably wouldn't even know what Taoism was, but I saw her in that context, and maybe I can explain that to some degree in this class. So for me, Taoism is kind of the closest underlying ancient philosophy upon which Alexander's work is based and fits. And maybe you'll get it. You'll understand how I see it that way. Yeah, that's enough to see how they're connected. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Should we start with a picture?
Yeah. I'm not a trained photographer. I can hardly know how to use my camera. I can do like turn it on and turn it off. And I can zoom, right? That's about it. And I have no formal training in writing either. But I've been motivated to do both because I'm joyfully obsessed with something in life, and I feel the urge to express it, capture it in some way, articulate it, share it. And so it's forced me to do these things. And then I'm glad it has, because I actually really enjoy writing and I enjoy seeing. Yeah, so let me share my screen. I picked some, where did I write that down? Hold on a second, let me find something in this computer. And if we do this and this. Getting close. All right. Now I'm going to share my screen. That's a view from right behind my computer is that window and that view. That's where I live. Now, somewhere, hold on, I'm going to find it. I have to move this transcript. And if I go, now if I go to recent, there it is. All right. So let's find. Well, let's start here. Yeah, right where I wanted. That's funny. This is a photo of in Busan, Korea. And it was a festivity. It was a New Year festivity. It happens in February because it's a lunar calendar, like the Jewish calendar. And I was in Busan with my daughter, who was born in Busan, who's Korean born. And it was the first, and she left Korea when she left Busan when she was 3 months old. And it was the first time that she was back in her life. Let's see, how old was she then? Maybe 35 years old. So we had just an absolute magical time in Busan because it was this holiday. So there were these huge campfires and dancing around the campfires in traditional Korean clothing. And a lot of the Korean people, particularly the women, would look at Eva and me and they just knew we were father and daughter. And they really embraced us. It was just fantastic. And then we tossed these lanterns. You put prayers. You write prayers and you put them in the lanterns, and then you send the lanterns up over the ocean. So it's just magical time. So she was praying, and I just happened to catch her there. She's on the rocks overlooking the ocean in Busan. Yeah. So I wrote this. I'm going to read this. I wrote this a long time ago. Like I think I was 45 maybe, and then Lao Tzu taught very often. Lao Tzu is thought of as a sage. Stephen Mitchell's wonderful translation, he uses the term master. I tend not to use those terms. I like talking about people who are awake, who are more impressively awake, or people who have some kind of knowledge, wisdom of some sort. I don't know. It just seems I'm more comfortable with that. So this is, I was trying to think, like, how does a Taoist teach? Like, what would a Taoist teacher be like? And this is what came out. Many teachers teach what they know. Teachers of the way teach what they do not know and need to understand. Some teachers think highly of themselves. Teachers of the way think highly of their students. Many teachers teach to their students. Teachers of the way study with their students. Some teachers teach to be the center of attention. Teachers of the way teach centered in attention. Many teachers teach to escape. Teachers of the way teach for entrance into existence. Some teachers want to be worshipped. Teachers of the way teach as a way of worshiping. Many teachers need to prove they are the best. Teachers of the way teach not needing to prove or reprove, they approve. Some teachers teach mainly for money. Teachers of the way freely choose what is required of them, doing so with gratitude and pleasure. Many teachers teach to be seen as attractive. Teachers of the way teach because within everyone there's beauty longing for itself. Yeah. So I've been teaching since I was 11. So it's just part of my makeup, I guess. In Judaism, I'm a HaKohen. It's like I'm from a particular Jewish tribe, and the HaKohen are the priests and the rabbis and the teachers. That's so who knows? You know, maybe I didn't have a choice at all. Maybe it's just my genetics.
Bruce, okay, I just want to ask you a little bit about this, because I remember first reading this and it being really striking to me. Some people will know that I'm not an Alexander teacher, but I was a mainstream school teacher for 20 years, and I have been involved in training teachers, and I still work in supporting teachers and supporting new teachers. So when I read this, it was like remembering something that I had forgotten that was really important. And I often find that that's what I experience when I read or reread your books. In fact, I just reread both of the books recently, and I keep having this experience of remembering something important that I seem to have forgotten. But the verse, some teachers teach to be the center of attention, teachers of the way teach centered in attention. It's very neatly done, but that's not easy. But it seems to me to be a key to the student-teacher relationship that you create when you're working with me and with other people. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it has to do with growing up being an ADHD kid, and no one knew that's what I was when I was little. Thank God, because they didn't put me on medicine. But although the medicine might be fine for people, who knows? I just don't know. But anyway, as an adult, I remember reading a book called Driven to Distraction. And when I read that book, I thought, oh yeah, I recognize that. So people with the kind of brain that I have often, they have a very hard time, we have a very hard time giving our attention to something we're not interested in. But if there's something we're interested in, we have extraordinary capacity for attention. And we can remember, we can organize very precisely in our brain something that we're really interested in, and things that we're not, it's just total chaos. So this particular subject that I am skilled at, whatever part of my brain clicks in, it clicks in. So I think that's why I have an unusual level of attention for people when I work with them in this way. I think that's where it comes from. Let me read you one that's a little depressing, but because it's about depression, but it's an important piece I find in Lao Tzu. And this one is really, I take tremendous poetic license. These are not translations. These are renderings, I call them. They're my own personal way of trying to understand Lao Tzu. But this one, in all the various translations I've read, almost everyone translates it quite similarly. And mine it's a little different, but not that different. So I want to read it to you because you see, this is the one place where I feel like Lao Tzu is not saying he's like perfect or a master at everything. You know, he's definitely sharing with us that he goes through difficult times, or at least maybe he did at some point. So let me share this one. Where did it go? Did it go here? I wonder why I lost it, but that's okay. I can get it back. Well, here it is. Maybe yeah, great. Oh, so wonderful. It's working. All right, so this is a picture I took, a photo I took in Italy. I was just walking around, lost in Rome. And there are quite a number of photos of older people in the way in, the way out. I've always been attracted to older people, much more to older people than children, actually. I just find older people really expressive and beautiful. And now I have grown into one, which makes me feel very comfortable, like I have finally grown into myself. But this guy, I think was having a hard time that day. And it just somehow, after I took the photo, I didn't know it when I took it, but he's right in contrast to this motorcycle. And I think he's feeling just the opposite of this motorcycle, he's not feeling like this. So anyway, I'm happy he's in my book. This was before I knew you really shouldn't take pictures of people without asking their permission. I later stopped doing that. So anyway, this is the passage, and I'm sure many of us can identify with this. Accepted or rejected, included or excluded, sanctioned or censored. Which is a compliment? Which is an insult? Ultimately, does it really matter? Don't be afraid of what people think of you. How do you think about yourself? That's what matters. I know what I say is true. Still, I feel utterly alone. I watch and listen to people around me. They are together eating, talking, laughing, enjoying one another as if life were one big party. I don't feel like eating. I don't talk. I don't smile. I'm exhausted. I can hardly move. I'm downhearted and depressed. I have a house, but no home. I am a homeless person. People around me go about living their lives. I feel like I have no life. I'm just an old man sitting and writing in the dark. What's wrong with me? Why am I so confused, so flooded in doubt? Everyone seems so full of purpose. They're clear. They know what they have to do and they do it. I drift aimlessly, blown this way and that like a cloud. I possess no solidity, no stability, no security. Yes, it is true. I am a stubborn man, reclusive, unreachable. Nothing but the Tao sustains me. From her alone, I receive sustenance. I am like a baby peacefully sucking at his mother's breast. That's so close to all the translations of that one. But then I wanted to read you something. See, what do I do here? Okay, I'm just going to keep that.
Bruce,
yeah.
Before you go on, it strikes me that given that not too many people have read the Way in, the Way Out, that they will have missed your introduction explaining the writing of it. And
Oh yeah, good point.
Passage.
Good point. Yeah. Good point. I wrote, hold on, I just want to see you guys. I wrote that book when I was really depressed. You know, it's interesting. Hermann Hesse wrote Siddhartha when he was really depressed. And that was one of his ways out of the depression. And then he wrote, when he was coming out of it, he wrote Narcissus and Goldman. But somehow I needed to, this book helped me move out of that bardo, that dark passage I was in. It lasted like 7 years. It was really a hard going, but I really did get out of it. And when I got out of it, it was radically a different world for me. So, and it has remained such. So I felt like I really was appreciative that that passage was in there, you know, and then I stumbled upon something that passage reminded me of something. And I wrote it down right here. It's written by Carl Jung. And when he, like a couple weeks before he died, he was studying Taoism right before he died for some reason. No idea why. And he writes, he says, and he's referring to this passage when he's writing, and he says, all are clear, I alone am clouded. Right? He's quoting Lao Tzu. Then he says, the more uncertain I have felt about myself, the more there has grown up in me a feeling of kinship with all things. Interesting. And he says, in fact, it seems to me as if that alienation which so long separated me from the world has become transferred into my own inner world and has revealed to me an unexpected unfamiliarity with myself. So it's so interesting. It was like he was okay with, oh, there's more to that quote. I'll send it to you in my notes. He was okay at the end of his life not knowing, being confused about himself, like feeling like he didn't know who he was, but he felt he really knew the world, you know. Great. I want to show you another image. And again, I want to show you another image and compare it to something. Yeah, and these images help me through this dark time also. Why doesn't that stay on my screen? I have no idea why. I think I'm keeping it on my screen. All right, let's look. Oh, that's a good one too. If you guys have questions like John, just interrupt me. 21, 22. There it is. Okay. This was a photo I took again this was in Florence, and this is Michelangelo's third Pieta. And this is my favorite. I mean, I love this first one too. I like all of them, but this one is I like very much. And because I'm a teacher that uses my hands, I love how she's using her hands here. The quality of this contact is totally unheld back. She's right under. It's very functional. He was a very functional emotional anatomist, Michelangelo, I think, and he understood about weight and support. He so much of his work is about weight and support. And so the way she's supporting his head, and of course it's the same piece of stone, which is just remarkable. And the way she's under, I work a lot right under there. I don't know, I just fell in love with it. I just thought that is contact. That is contact that is fearless. Yeah, so now this is fascinating. When you look at the full sculpture, here's Joseph supporting Mary's back, helping Mary support Jesus. This figure was added later. This figure, I forget who this is, but can you see the difference between the contact, the quality of the contact? Can you see how this is postural and this is not? This is really real. And this is posed and non-functional, like that person could be barely doing anything in terms of helping. And the attention is almost on them, it's away from him, right? Whereas Joseph's attention on Mary, Mary's attention is on Jesus. I don't know what this person is doing. So this is what I'm interested in. This is exciting to me. This moves me. This doesn't. And I just think it's amazing that it's there in one sculpture. I don't know what I have written there. Let's see what it is. That's an interesting one. Yeah, it says, what's it called? It's called A Little Girl and a Little Boy. Two children balance on a seesaw. The little girl relaxes her weight down so that the little boy can float up. Sinking precedes rising. Pour water into an empty glass. Watch how it falls to the bottom before rising to the top. Aligned with the natural forces of this world, receive the weight of others, all their weight. Let their weight pass through your bones and deep into the ground. Serve in that way, and the ground will rise up through you, supporting them. Receive them, and you will be received. So I don't know if you can imagine it, but I'm trying to figure out how to, kind of come back to life from that dark period. And I'm wrestling with these forces, of up and down, and how one has to go down before they can go up. I almost had to grow down, not grow up. I had to grow down. And then I came out of something. So I was, just looking for answers, I guess. And yeah, wrestling with the material. But again, can you see how I physicalize everything? How it's all my somatic training. It's like it wasn't enough for me to understand that psychologically. I had to understand it in my body. And I don't really understand anything very well unless I feel it in my body, in my bones. So that's why I call this thoughts from a marrow bone. Yeah. It comes from that poem by Yeats. Do you know that poem? God guard me from the thoughts men think in the mind alone. He that sings a lasting song. sings from the Marrow bow. You British guys have great poets. Amazing. So, any questions? Anything you want to ask me? Yeah, Minky. Minky, where are you today?
I'm in Helsinki, in Finland.
Great, great. Yeah,
And
what's
my
your question?
is, because I have written a book too, but many years ago, and it was when I went through a depression. How long did it take for you to go through this?
I was struggling for a good 7 years. It was really long.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it was really long. I was really put through the test. But
Yeah.
but when I came out of it, I talk about, and I write about this in the book, I felt like Rip Van Winkle. You know that story where he fell asleep for 100 years? I don't know what country that comes from, right? But this guy, he's cast in a spell and he falls asleep for 100 years and he wakes up and he's really old, right? So like before I went into that dark period, I was like young, I was a dancer, I was married, I had children, I had parents, I lived in a big house, right? When I woke up on the other side of this, I was an old man. I wasn't a dancer. I was married, but to another person. I wasn't living in Philadelphia. My children were gone. They were grown up. My parents had died. It was like, what? It was like, really, it was like I was a completely different person in a different life. William James calls it twice born. There are once born people who are sort of awake, and then there are twice born people that don't wake up until they go through something. So like Whitman was like a once born person. Whitman just woke up when he just wrote one book, his whole life. He just was like that. But other people, Tolstoy other people it didn't work that way. They had to go through something and then they woke up. So it turned out I was more of the latter. What Lao Tzu, we never know what Lao Tzu, what he was like. I don't know. No idea. He may be more than one person, actually.
What was the change evident in your teaching, Bruce? Were you a different kind of teacher?
It did change very much. Very much. It changed my teaching radically. I write about it a little bit in Teaching by Hand. In the beginning, I was very much an idea-oriented teacher, and I was a technique-oriented teacher. I wanted to be great. And I wanted to impress everyone with how great I was. And so that was my orientation. And I had a nice, humble kind of costume over it. So it didn't seem so obvious. But actually, I was really narcissistic and egocentric and just wanted to impress everybody. And then afterwards, I just wanted to teach for my students. That's it. Birgit. Yeah.
I have a question. I have not, unfortunately, read neither of the books, but I will. I am very prompted. The first, this may be too large a question, but how do you implement the Wu Wei into the work of the hands
Mm,
in your,
yeah.
I think you understand. I don't want
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I
explain
do.
too
And
much.
I'll read you a passage about that. I'll
Okay.
read you a passage.
Can I just
And
check that everyone understands the term Wu Wei? Because if you haven't read the Tao Te Ching, you may not be familiar with it. It's a huge term, very difficult to translate. It's sometimes translated as non-doing, but I would probably translate it more along the lines of non-efforting. Um, maybe that's enough. We could go into it for a long time, but maybe that's enough to keep people
yeah, yeah.
in
Yes, there's one
the breath.
translation. It's not really a translation. It's an interpretation of Wu Wei that Thomas Merton used. I like, he called it harmonious activity. Is really very close. It's because each activity, for us to do anything, we have to be doing something, but we also have to not be doing something, right? It's like you can't, to bend your elbow, you have to stop using certain muscles, right? Like, in other words, you have to stop straightening your arm to be able to bend your arm. You have to stop bending your arm to be able to straighten your arm. There are, right? There's excitation and inhibition, neurological excitation and neurological inhibition that has to happen to make any action happen, right? So you have knowing what to do and what not to do inside of an action or inside of a interaction. Actually, everything is an interaction. There are no actions. There are only interactions. So inside of any interaction, knowing, what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do, right? So Wu Wei, we could think for a long time. Now there's something that makes me think Alexander was very Taoist, because I think he was fascinated with effortlessness and with non-forcing, not overdoing things.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I see. So when I use my hands,
Yes.
let me read something to you, okay? It's one of the things I wrote that I'm happiest about, if I can find it. See, it's my ADD thing. Okay, now let's see. And okay, wait, I'm going to share my screen. And you see it's down there. Okay, so now, which one is that? Which one is that? It's worth waiting for. Let me do it. Hold on a second. Oh, those are good too. Hold on. If I had like if this book was a real book, I would be able to find these quickly. Oh, it's there's actually so much in this book about non-doing. It's just full of this subject. Ah. John, maybe you know which one it is. It's the one where it talks about how she follows us, she leads us, about leading and following. And
like you say, so much of the book is about non-doing.
yeah, it's so much. I may have to just send it to you. Oh, well, we'll go on. Maybe I'll stumble upon it at some point. Let's look at, let's see what number we're at. If I make this smaller, I might have more luck. I'm sorry if I'm making you dizzy with this. Let's see what 41 is. $58. $62. That's a good one. I think I'm close. Here it is. Here it is. So this one's called Love Runs Downstream. And this is as close as I can. This gives you a feeling of what on a good day, what my hands feel like and kind of what happens. And I've worked on this skill for a long time, and it's still elusive. This is the river that close to my house. It's called the Chama. Atop countless mountains, mountain springs, creeks and brooks begin their descent, winding around trees, washing over rocks. Rivulets merge into small streams, streaming into larger streams, becoming rivers, pouring into the sea. Love runs downstream. Guiding us, this is the part, guiding us, she never uses force, doesn't push. Her touch is beyond soft, cannot be felt, only sensed. She's a whisper of wind, leading us from behind, encouraging us forward to a place known to her, unknown to us. We are going the way she wants us to go. She follows us as we go her way. She never looks down upon us, doesn't oversee us, never blocks our view. She wants us to see. That's all she wants. Yeah, so when my teacher was having a good day, and you know, some days her hands were better than other days, but when her hands were good, they didn't feel like hands. They felt like a breeze. I mean, you couldn't feel her hands. All you felt was yourself changing. You didn't feel her. You felt that, oh my God, something is happening in me. And she knew where she wanted you to go. But I had no idea where I was going. right? It was totally new territory for me, right? She knew, I didn't. And it was so soft that you couldn't feel her. And that was really inspiring to me. It was like, she disappeared. She just totally disappeared. Yeah. And then there you were left really there, right? So it was fantastic. It was really made a big impression on me. Yeah. So that's this non-forcing. And I use Lao Tzu speaks in the female. He talks about the eternal female, the female principle. And he talks about the favorite image is the valley spirit. He talks about the valley, not the mountain. He never talks about a mountain. He talks about a stream. He talks about a valley, the valley spirit. Almost all the translations translate it that way, the valley spirit. Right? Emptiness, not something that's high, something that's low, something that receives, a receptacle, something that receives, something that's empty. That's what he loved, you know. Any questions? Is this interesting to you at all? Does anyone have any questions about teaching by hand? Since that's the book that you read. Do any of you have questions about that book? Not really.
Shall I lead us into it by asking you to say a little bit more about, and it's a quote that fits in perfectly with what you were just talking about, but it's the quote from Frank Attewell,
Yeah.
where at one point he gave you advice, which was, Bruce, don't try to help your students, get to know them instead.
Yeah, Frank was a great teacher and a very different kind of person than me. At the time, I was very extroverted. And like I said, really wanted to make a strong impression. So I wanted to go in there and make the change. I wanted to blow that person away. Do you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to have people see what a big change I could make in this person or that person. And so I did it sort of in the guise of helping people. And I was helpful to people. But I think Frank saw that. Frank was an extremely perceptive person and studied with many, not just Alexander teachers, but many teachers. And he was of that temperament. He was more Taoist by nature. He sat back. He tended to sit in a corner. He was the last one to speak. He was quiet, soft, and very perceptive. Yeah, and then he said, Bruce, just don't try to help people so much. Just get to know them. That was his. And some light bulb went off there. Yeah. And I write that somewhere. I say, if you in the Lao Tzu book, I write, if you see your student, they'll start to see themselves. If you really hear your student, they'll start to hear themselves. And if you really understand, get to know that person, they'll get to know themselves. Yeah.
Can you give an example of what you mean to, like examples of how you would get to know someone? Would that be asking questions or?
Yes, very often. Asking questions. Yeah, and putting them in the figure of the conversation. So, for example, if you read that little tiny chapter in Teaching by Hand about my dad when he was dying, there is a perfect example of a person that at that point in his life, all he wanted to do was get to know other people. You know, he was dying, right? The first thing, the nurse would come in, the first thing he would say is, "How are you doing? What's happening?" Right? And then the nurse would say, "Oh my God, I was up all night. My daughter has a, what's your daughter's name?" Right? And he just get that person opening up to him. Right. So, yeah, Martina.
Can I say something also in the same line? What I found very impressive in your book, Teaching by Hands, Learning by Heart, was when you spoke about kindness. I found this very interesting because people are very different culturally, and this idea of it's a bit the same thing, getting to know the person and realizing how the person ticks, because that's, I think, a very interesting approach, this idea of kindness and what kind of person are you, basically, and
Yes,
getting to know the person. I think that's very, very important.
And to get to know the culture. Yeah, exactly. That's a great example of it. It's like, if one example I use in that chapter is if you're in Japan and you're an American, and Americans are like huggy people, and in Japan people don't hug in public. They don't even touch each other in public. They bow, right? And they stay a certain distance apart. They have socially, stand a little further away. They're not touchy-feely people in public. And so if you go to hug someone, they're going to be uncomfortable, right? You're making them uncomfortable. So, if you know their culture and you know what makes them comfortable, then, right? So then that would be an example where that could be helpful. Then you could start that person to be more comfortable. They might open up better to you, and so on. Same with animals, how you approach a dog. You don't approach a dog by putting your hand on, standing up really high over them and put their hand on top of their head. Most dogs are going to hate that. So, like getting to know, like Martina says, what kind of person they are. You can't really be kind unless you know what kind of person they are, right? How they think, how they feel, how they move, right? Does that help, Nicholas? Yeah, rather than like having your own agenda and just putting it on them, right? That would be not very Taoist approach.
Bruce, surely a lot of the book is centered around ways to get to know the other person. It's about seeing people, it's about listening to people, it's about interrupting the kind of the first critical response where you're trying to look for something to change in someone so as you can earn your money. The whole thing about seeing aesthetically a person is about getting to know them, isn't it?
is.
And
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
I think you maybe it's worth talking a little bit about seeing aesthetically, which is such an important part of this book.
Yeah, yeah, good point. And, you know, just Nicholas, it was such a good question that you asked. When I'm working with a person, especially, you know, individually, but in groups too, if they're going to work with me with a certain situation, I'll say, well, you know, I'll be very vague. Well, what's happening? What goes on in that situation? You know, what's happening in you? Right. So I ask a kind of general question like that, and they'll start to talk. And then I'll ask another question, they'll talk some more. And at a certain point, there's an opening. It's like, I could enter there. That's the door. And then I'll step in. But I wait until that door opens there. Yeah, so I do that. And then the other thing is John's point is important here too, is that when I look at people, if I'm in the role of an Alexander teacher, for example, or I'm working in that context, I don't really look at them physically. Like that's not where I start. Like looking at their head and their neck and how they're sitting, and not in a technical way. I don't look at people technically. So I look at people actually more the way we do look at people in everyday life. You know, like we look at people's faces, we see if they're sad, we see if they're scared, we see if they're lonely. Yeah, just, you know, how they're doing that day. And then, but I like looking at people not just in their face. For me, their whole body is their face. So I look at the whole body, you know, the chest and the shoulders, but I'm not looking for like, what are they doing wrong? Or how could I free them up more? Not initially. I'm just looking at, and this is the aesthetic. I look at them like artwork. I look at them in terms of beauty, in terms of human expression, in terms of pain, actually, but not necessarily physical pain, just like, is that person hurting somehow? And then what happens after that, and then I watch people communicate. When they communicate, I watch their gestures and listen to their intonation in their voice and the language that they choose. So I'm taking all that in. And then somehow, after all that, I know what their skeleton is doing. I totally know what they're doing skeletally, muscularly. You know, I just see it. It's just like clear as a bell, right? But if I start trying to analyze a person neuromuscularly, I don't see them. I don't see the person. I'm like just seeing their structure. It's so small, such a small way to see someone. So that's what I do. And that's what I try to teach my students to do. Then my hands work much better. And then my hands are more loving, more empathetic when I touch. And that makes them softer. Yeah.
Bruce, I love the way you speak about the aesthetic body, the cultural body, emotional body, physical body, spiritual body, the created body. I've heard you say that before. There's different sort of what make up.
Yeah, I see people of having lots of bodies.
Yeah, the
And
gender body.
yeah, yeah. Just, yeah, because And my desire very often is to get people in touch with their mammal body. I tell people that we're so lucky to be part of the animal kingdom and to be a mammal. And there's so much wisdom in the mammal body. And then we acquire these other kinds of bodies because we're such complex animals. And and so when people get in touch with their mammal body, very often they come into contact with their naturalness and their power and a certain kind of animal beauty. And I like this, you know. Then they don't worry about like so much what they look like on the outside. That's the appearance body. So I talk about my dog a lot, you know, my dog who died a couple years ago, Rusty. But Rusty never saw himself in a mirror, never knew if he was male or female, never knew what age he was when he was born, never wore clothes, never did it, you know. What would that be like? You know, what would it be like if I didn't know what I looked like and I didn't know what age I was? I didn't know what aging was. Right? And what if I had never looked in a mirror? How would I move? What would I be like? Yeah. Well, let's see if I can find something else. Any other questions? Are you doing okay? You ready to fall asleep? See, it's early where I am. It's late where you guys are. Just let me know. Do you want to go a little more? Or do you want to go a little more? Let's see what I can find. There might be something I want to share.
Can I suggest a photograph?
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
The Apache pot in the on the shelf or in the window.
Let's see where that is. Must be later. Is it later? I thought it was early. Guess not. Is that in here somewhere? Which one is that? Do you remember what it's about?
I can put it, if I can share the screen, I can put it on. Shall we try that?
Oh, that's in teaching by hand. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you just show it to us? Let's see. How would you do that? You would. Here, wait. I'm going to pin you. Hold on a second. There you go. Go show us the picture. Okay. Oh, no. Now you would have to hold it up in the book. I can hold it up in the book. Wait a second. I'm going to do it. Wait.
I can't share my screen.
Yeah, that's all right. So wait. Okay. I can show you. It's this picture.
Showing. There we go.
Yeah. It's in fact, I can almost do better than that. I can show you that pot. This is the pot. Yeah. So this was made by one of my friends, an Apache Indian named Felipe Ortegas. And one of the things that's very interesting in this pot, if you look right here, you see how there's an opening there. It's not closed. Goes all the way around, and then there's a space right there. And when I saw that, when Felipe first gave me the pot, I thought maybe that was a mistake. Oh, he said, no, we never close our circles. We never close our circles. We always want people to be able to come in and go out. The same with their sweat lodges. You can always go out if you need to. So yeah, that was in Teaching by Hand. That's one of my favorite chapters in that book. It's called The Decision. And I use pottery. Sometimes I'll talk about, I'll use pottery as a metaphor, like how you work with clay, especially how you throw a pot and how you wedge clay. Because you have to be able, well, first the clay has to have a lot of moisture in it, and it needs to be moved and warmed, and it actually needs to be moved in spirals. There are two wedging techniques. One is called a ram's horn, where you make these spirals that look like horns, like that. And then there's another that's called a conch, and you make a kind of nautilus conch shell pattern. It's a gorgeous spiral. And so then you make a ball. So then you need to make a sphere, and then you got to plop it on the wheel in the center, but to get it really in the center. So the way you get it really in the center is you bring the clay up and down and up and down and up and down. Does that sound familiar to Alexander teachers? And up and down and up and down. Yeah. And the inside of that, the clay gets really organized. And then you can work it. Then you don't need to use anything. You just move the wheel, and the clay is like in the center of the universe, and you just don't need to do very much at all, and it just opens up, changes shape. It's gorgeous to watch. So that's a fun chapter, and there's a lot in that chapter about my friend Eva Forman, who is now 92 years old, who still drives a stick shift, still rides her bicycle, still swims, still walks 4 miles a week, hike with her, walking with her, whatever, Nordic, and still sings in the choir, still teaches Alexander technique. I mean, she's amazing. And yeah, I love being with her. She's just I don't know. She's my older sister. I've adopted her. Yeah. So you could read about her. That's reasons for getting the book right there. Just read about Eva. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
If we're sticking to our 90 minutes, then
We should stop soon.
it's time to ask you
Go ahead. That
what's
was
next.
Oh yeah.
Because there's I think I said on Monday, there's a startling sentence for me anyway, in one of the books where you talk about suddenly, after decades and decades of daily practice, you just give up dance, and then you give up Tai Chi, just like that. And then I know recently you recently handed over the Alexander Alliance to the next generation. And it feels like there's a kind of shedding process that is going on across the years. And presumably that's to make room for the next version, the next iteration of your teaching. What's next for you?
Yeah, I think I think this is so important that they're knowing when it's the right time for something. Timing, like letting something go too soon. It's like finishing a painting or something or a poem. It's like, when is that finished? Like, yes, that's finished. And it's the right time to transition. It's the right time to drop something and open up a space. And even if it's scary and you don't know what's going to be there. That was really intense to give up my Alexander School after owning it and directing it and creating it. And for 40 years, my identity is so wrapped up in this school, and to just give it away, right? And it was really, oh my God, who am I? What am I? What's going to happen? And meanwhile, it was so liberating. It's released terrific energy and creativity, not just in me, but in the people I gave it to, right? So definitely, looking at it, even though it feels so weird, I can't express it. It feels so weird. I can see it's right. Yeah, perfect timing, perfect. It's rare that something's that perfect. But I was so scared to do it. I was just terrifying, but I did it. And so I think there's just, I knew when I was a dancer, I was 32 and I was really finally getting good, like I was really at the peak of my ability. And then Martha and I wanted to adopt a kid, and I wanted to start a school. And I said, I can't do all these things well. Just can't. Something's got to go. So I quit my university jobs. I stopped dancing, and I put everything into starting this school and being a dad, And that was the right thing to do, I think. So it's this, our culture is so having oriented, getting this and achieving this and and I think so often it has to be, there's something so beautiful about, well, let that go and let that go and let that go and give that up. And I don't need this and I don't need that. And I don't know. Maybe it has to do with age. You get older and you just want to throw things out. You just give just less and less is so good. So, yeah. So anyway, the next thing for me is really this grace of sense. That is my new territory. Who am I as a person and teacher? Not being an Alexander teacher, and not that I have to abandon that, but that I don't think of myself as an Alexander teacher anymore. And yeah, I know there's an Alexander teacher, Tommy Thompson. He talks about withholding definition. I think it's a great concept. It's just like, not to define ourselves so strictly. So it's just like, well, it's like Jung at the end of his life. Oh, I don't know who I am. I don't know. I have no idea. Let's see what happens. Let's see what comes forward. So let me finish. I'm going to finish on a quote that I really like. I think I can bring it up without sharing my screen. So, no. Yes. This is from Emerson. And actually, Emerson is really interesting for me because this guy named John Dewey actually studied with Emerson. when he was really old. And then John Dewey and Alexander were really close. And then one of my mentors, Buzz Gummery, studied with Dewey and Alexander when Dewey was really old, like 90, you know. And then Buzz and I just kind of studied with each other, actually, for many, many years, like 30 years. So I feel a link. I actually feel almost a direct link to Emerson through these teachers. So he I think this is on his essay in Self-Reliance. He says, "My book should smell of pines and resound with the hum of insects. The swallow over my window should interweave that thread or straw he carries in his bill into my web also." So that's where I feel I'm going, is a certain blending of myself in with the world, in with the, weaving of myself into the world. I have to show you a picture of that. So it's somewhere down there, but this is the fastest way to get it. I saw this is a painting or etching I saw in Venice at the Guggenheim, really wonderful museum. Here it is. Isn't she wonderful? Like, let me make that larger. I just love that non-separation between her body and the environment. So that's where I feel I'm going. It's this this interweaving with the world, particularly the natural world, but really anything. And I'll show you one more image about that, and then I think we're going to finish. Were you able to see that image? Did I share it? Okay.
Yeah.
So this will be my last, this is my goodbye, I promise. See, I told you, I get very excited about this material. I'm so surprised. So this one is, where is that? What page is that on? Or what essay is that about the oh, there it is. I passed it. Oh yeah, it's the meditation one. So this is a picture of an old adobe from the 1744 in New Mexico on my way to Santa Fe. I passed this church. They still hold mass at certain times of the year in this. And for years and years, this window frame was there. And I loved it. I took a photo of it. And I was looking at it one day because I used to pull over. I was so mesmerized by it. And I would stand in front of it and I'd see the sky inside the frame and I'd see the sky outside the frame, same sky. And the only thing separating the inside and the outside is this frame, right? So I was, well, who would I be without that frame? What if the frame was gone? What if the frame was gone? And then one day I was driving, like always, to get food, an hour and a half away from my house. That's how far out I live in the country. And the frame was gone. It was gone. So, and I don't have a picture of that. So I realized that after the last class, I am going to take a picture of that same church without the frame, and then I'll put them together so you can see it. And so I might not send you the notes to this class, but I'll send you something, and I'm going to wait until I have that photo, and then I'll send you the two photos together. I think that's going to be cool. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming to my class. And I'm going to make this a YouTube, so then if you ever want to share it with someone, you can share it. Gabby and Felipe are in charge of that. And also, I have a class coming up called Inlets to the Soul, which is a really sweet class, and it's free. So I'll let you know about that also. I think it's on the 9th of September. And then at some point in October, I think I start Grace of Sense Begins. That's a series of 5 classes. And those 5 classes have turned out to be really clear in terms of material. So maybe some of you will want to join me for that. Okay? I'm going to stop.